Ask someone who grew up with the Super Nintendo, and you'll often find that Donkey Kong Country is one of their favorite games of all time. Or maybe even more often, the second one. Or maybe both. Not you. But yeah, if I had to choose a single series of games that defines the Super Nintendo for me, Donkey Kong Country comes to mind immediately. The series as a whole may be my single favorite group of 2D platformers ever made. These games were built to be the most technically advanced on the console, with some of the highest quality graphics you could find anywhere at the time, and more complex gameplay than most other platformers. Sure, being born in 2002 means I don't have the experience of growing up with these games or seeing them in the context of the 90s, but that means I can be a testament to just how well they've aged. Even 30 years later, they could still win me over with their unique and interesting take on one of the most overpopulated genres in all of gaming. But that's more about the series as a whole. Donkey Kong Country 1 has never been one of my absolute favorites despite all the things it does well. Of the 4 games in the series I've played, which are 1, 2, 3, and Tropical Freeze, it ranks dead last. Granted, that's last place in a group of truly amazing games, so keep that in mind. I promise this isn't a video about why DKC 1 is actually bad or something like that, but I still do have some issues that I feel like not many people talk about. In any case, I wanted to play this game again to see if there's anything I missed the first time around. So, let's answer a few questions. What does DKC do to stand out in a sea of other 2D platformers? And does the first one deserve its reputation as an all-time classic? It's time to find out. By 1994, Nintendo consoles already had a pretty good variety of platformers. If you wanted clean, well-balanced fun, you'd go to Mario. If you wanted something a bit simpler and more colorful, Kirby had just floated onto the scene. And if Nintendo's output themselves didn't work for you, well, why not try out some third-party platformers like Mega Man and Castlevania? There was certainly no lack of options. Well, here comes Rare, a highly prolific NES developer. They had released, over 60 games on the platform? Now that is insane. I can't imagine most of them were all that impressive, but they did have their successes, of course. With the release of the Super Nintendo, they decided to switch gears and shift their focus completely to quality over quantity. This involved the purchase of some silicon graphics computers, the most state-of-the-art graphics technology you could find. They could even produce 3D models, and after essentially taking a series of still images of these models and then transforming them into animated sprites, they would end up with the best pre-rendered graphics in any console game of the time. After Nintendo became impressed with Rare's technical knowledge, they gave them permission to produce a new Donkey Kong game, the first in over 10 years, and thus Donkey Kong Country was born. Immediately after release, DKC began receiving accolade after accolade, with some of the best reviews and sales on the Super Nintendo. For reference, the only 2 games on the console that sold more are Super Mario World, the main launch title, and Super Mario All-Stars, a collection of 4 other Mario games, most of which are classics themselves. And when I say most, I don't mean all. So yeah, I'd say the game did pretty well for itself. Even today, look at a list of the greatest SNES games, and it's not uncommon to see it crack the top 10, and that's for good reason. So what exactly makes DKC such a beloved classic? One of the first and most obvious reasons to me is Rare's trademark flair. Nowadays, Rare is considered quite a legendary development studio. Most of you probably already know their story. They made a good number of the most iconic Super Nintendo and especially N64 games you could think of, such as Banjo-Kazooie and GoldenEye 007. Only for them to be bought out by Microsoft after that and do essentially nothing of note for decades after. So, Donkey Kong Country throws out nearly everything Donkey Kong had been associated with up to this point and starts from a clean slate. As early as the title screen, you get a sense of how different this game is going to be. Cranky Kong, the original Donkey Kong from the arcade days, sits listening to a gramophone. His grandson, our new redesigned DK, busts down the place with a boombox. We're treated to some slapstick comedy and some visual effects that I think still look good to this day, if a bit dated. And in a single moment, the franchise has been redefined. Rare brings a sense of British humor into whatever they create, and it's led to a well-defined, instantly recognizable style that so many people love. And of course, I'm one of those people. I just love all the little touches they add, injecting a sense of life and pure unadulterated fun into their games. And that shows up absolutely everywhere in DKC. Every character and every enemy makes funny and exaggerated noises, from the monkey sounds of Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, to the grunts of the Kremlings, the enemy force led by King K. Rool. Or my favorite, the birds. DKC doesn't take itself too seriously, making fun of other video games any chance it gets. Why are we going on this adventure? Oh no, crocodiles stole the monkey's bananas. Yep, that's literally the whole story. Cranky Kong sits in his rocking chair smacking his grandkids on the head with his cane, and talks about how much better he is at video games than the lazy kids these days. Diddy Kong gets mad and stomps on his hat whenever he fails a challenge. When you complete a bonus room, it's not uncommon for you to fall out of the sky and absolutely demolish a bird or something like that, which is funny every single time. During the credits, DK and Diddy essentially just spend the whole time beating each other up. You know, normal family interactions. In general, the whole game is just charming, cartoony, and fun to look at. But the game isn't just slapstick and funny jokes. The comedy is juxtaposed with a surprising number of atmospheric moments, which the graphics and music contribute to near perfectly. There's a real sense of moodiness throughout the game. Just look at the first level, Jungle Hijinks. It's in, you guessed it, a jungle, and everything looks great. The level has clear skies the whole way through, until you get to the level exit and it turns dark all of a sudden. Go play the second level, Ropey Rampage, and you're now in the same jungle but it's dark and stormy with very different lighting effects. Later on, we get to Orangutan Gang, which takes place in the same environment yet again, but now the sun is setting, turning the sky orange and the foreground a bit darker. Basically, they make an effort to give every level some sort of unique aesthetic. Even in areas that are technically retreads of what you've seen before, they throw in specific details like this to keep it fresh. There are definitely a few times where they just copy and paste the theming from a previous level, or at least it feels that way, but these aren't too common, so it's not a big deal. And there are a good variety of themes you get to see throughout the game as well. At the beginning, most levels see you running through some kind of natural environment, be that jungles, caves, swamps, oceans, etc. But as you progress through the different worlds, more and more man-made structures show up. There are mines, ancient temples, treetop cities, and at the very end, nefarious-looking factories. And then the final boss even takes place on a pirate ship. For all of these, I think the pre-rendered graphical style has aged better than you would have expected. While it does look a bit dated, I guess, it has a unique charm that still holds up today, and I just personally really love the way it looks. At the very least, I'd definitely take this over like every single N64 game ever made, so not something you'll find me complaining about. And the music, of course, is well known for being amazing. It was composed by David Wise, Evelyn Fisher, and Robin Beanland. David Wise especially is one of the greatest video game composers ever and definitely one of my favorites. Although I have to say, like the game itself, I don't think the music here is anywhere near the peak of the series. A few later games would improve on it dramatically. That being said, there's a lot to love here, and the best songs in DKC 1 are some of the most iconic in video game history. There are three that absolutely everyone knows. First is DK Island Swing, which has been the main theme of Donkey Kong ever since this game came out. There's Aquatic Ambience, one of the most atmospheric and memorable songs ever composed by anyone. And then, of course, the unmistakable Gangplank Galleon, King K. Rool's theme. Oh, and you can probably throw in the bonus room and level select music as well. These are all great, but I'd argue this version of Gangplank Galleon is maybe a tiny bit overrated. I prefer Life in the Mines, Fear Factory, and Simian Segway. The reason that I don't think this is one of the best soundtracks in the series, though, is that a lot of the music is kind of forgettable. These tend to be the ones not composed by David Wise, and not to say the other composers aren't good, but I just like his style more. Even the less memorable tracks are still very atmospheric and work well in the context of the game, though, so not a deal breaker at all, just not as good when compared to the later games. But if we're looking at things as a whole, this game has such a striking and well-executed aesthetic, and it's obvious why something like this would stick in the minds of players even 30 plus years later. And I'd probably consider this the single best aspect of DKC 1. Sure, future games would improve the graphics technically and have better art design and better music if you ask me, but the first game nails a sense of atmosphere that I think is still the best in the series. And obviously I can't speak for them myself, but I think this is why DKC 1 remains many people's favorite, even over what I consider to be the significantly more fun sequels. Speaking of, let's get to that. Obviously, a game is nothing without its gameplay, and to be honest, Rare nailed the basics here. At its most simple level, Donkey Kong Country is a level-based platformer, not unlike Mario, Kirby, or Mega Man. You go from start to finish, dodge and defeat enemies, and deal with whatever obstacles are in your way. Bananas and balloons are Mario's coins and 1-ups, and you can either jump on enemies' heads or hit them with a roll attack, with some enemies being immune to one or the other. But even if it is technically similar to those games, the feeling of actually playing DKC is unlike anything else you've ever seen. First of all, I want to mention the controls. They're very, very different from most platformers of the time. I would describe them simply as fast and fluid. If you know these levels well, you can really just zoom through them at high speed, chaining roll attacks and jumps with whatever else the stage throws at you. And most levels are designed around this idea. In something like Mega Man, the controls feel much more digital. By that I mean your movements and the buttons you press feel one-to-one. Let go of the D-pad and you immediately stop moving. But in DKC, there's a sense of momentum to everything you do. Roll through a chain of enemies and you'll keep speeding up over time, which is always satisfying. Pick up a barrel and throw it, and the attack may not be instantaneous, but it has a very generous hitbox which more than picks up the slack. You can even hold a barrel in front of you to instantly destroy any enemy or wall in your way without slowing down at all. There's a real sense of flow to rushing through these stages, and everything about the moveset feels perfectly tuned to contribute to it. There are two characters you get to control, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Donkey Kong, who I'll just call DK, is focused on power, having an easier time beating some of the tougher enemies. This is nice, but not something you absolutely need at all times. Diddy is faster and more agile, with longer and higher jumps that feel so much better to actually use. So then you'd want to use Diddy basically all the time, but the two Kongs also act as your health bar. When you take a hit, you lose the current character until you can get them back with a buddy barrel somewhere in the level. This really only highlights how much better Diddy is though, as anytime I'm stuck with DK I just can't wait to find one and switch back. DK even holds barrels above him rather than in front, which is a less useful position since the enemies you'd want to attack tend to come from the front. And it also leads to a few other problems that we'll discuss later. That being said, it's still fun playing with both characters, and I like that both of them are here. Some levels also have animal buddies, which act as temporary transformations that give you new abilities until you take damage and they run away. There's Rambi the Rhino, Espresso the Ostrich, Winky the Frog, and On Guard the Swordfish. They don't show up too often, but when they do it really changes how that level plays out. Rambi is easily my favorite, just running over enemies without even trying, and opening bonus rooms just by touching them. Espresso is fun, but not because he's actually satisfying to play as. He can glide, greatly increasing the distance you can travel in the air. They mostly use this for interesting bonus room challenges, asking you to carry him to faraway locations while not getting hit a single time. And I usually like these, when they're placed well. Winky kind of sucks, he just makes you jump higher, but his controls are really slippery and I always find myself taking it slow so I won't just fall into a bottomless pit. And On Guard is also great, giving you much better control and an attack while underwater. He's often hidden in obscure locations in the water levels, which is a good reward for searching around. The animal buddies also play into how you rack up extra lives. If you collect 3 of these tokens, you'll be taken to a special bonus stage where you can grab a bunch of little mini collectibles with a time limit. For each 100 of them that you grab, you'll get an extra life. These rooms are pretty fun, and if you can find the secret ×2 multiplier, you can get up to like 7 or 8 extra lives. In the harder worlds, this is actually really useful because of the way saving works in this game. Each world has a Funky's Flights and a Candy's save point. If you reach one of these, then now you have the opportunity to save at any time for the rest of the world. This is actually a pretty interesting system which adds a unique pacing to the game. The beginning of each world is tense since you don't know how long it'll be until you get the chance to save. And then beating the level that unlocks a save point is really satisfying as a result. But the issue is that if you're a first time player and get a game over, you now have a ton of progress to do over, which sucks. I personally like the way it works because of how easy it is to get extra lives if you try even a tiny bit, but I'd understand if this caused problems for you. So the controls are pretty good and the basic systems are really solid. This stuff alone would give the game its own flavor of platforming, but there's a lot more going on to craft a unique experience. So let's get into DKC's level design, one of the most important parts of any platformer, and in my opinion the thing that could really make or break this game. First, let's talk about the basic platforming gameplay. One of the reasons that DKC will always beat 2D Mario for me personally is actually the level design. Nearly every single level tries to do something different, and they tend to base each one around a unique mechanic. For a simple example, let's look at Stop and Go Station, one of my favorite levels in the game. At the beginning, there's this scary looking unbeatable enemy quickly pacing left and right. Press these stop barrels and they'll crumple in place for a bit, letting you pass. Now you have to rush past this one before it wakes up, and immediately get to another mini challenge based on the same idea. They increase the difficulty and complexity as you pass more of the obstacles. Now you have to push a tire into position to be able to hit the stop barrel and get onto a moving platform. At the very end, you have to chain multiple stop barrels in a row as the running enemies cover basically the whole platform. And then you're done, with the whole thing taking only a few minutes if you're just trying to get to the end. It's a tried and true method of level design, and it's put to good use here. The majority of levels in DKC 1 follow this structure. Another pretty fun one is Trick Track Trek, which, first of all, what a great name. Another instance of the rare sense of humor I love. Basically every level name uses a bit of alliteration or some other wordplay, making them all really fun to say. Treetop Town, Reptile Rumble, Slip Slide Ride, Blackout Basement, Necky's Nuts? Maybe not that one. Back to Trick Track Trek though, the whole level takes place on one platform moving on a rail. It'll speed up and go in interesting directions, and progressively tougher enemies will show up over time. And some levels essentially act as sequels to previous ones. Tanked Up Trouble uses the same idea, but now the platform has limited fuel. You have to collect a bunch of fuel barrels in tougher and tougher locations as the level goes on, or else the platform will fall and you'll be dead. In general, I find that the game is great about giving you some kind of interesting gimmick in every stage. Barrel Cannon Canyon focuses on chains of timed barrel cannon shots, as the name suggests. These are always a fun time and show up a lot throughout the series. In this level, you can even find some secret barrels on an upper path that let you fly over everything in under a minute. Forest Frenzy is a lot of riding ropes while dodging enemies. In Slip Slide Ride, the ropes will be colored blue or purple, pulling you up or down. Vulture Culture's main idea is murdering every bird you see, and yes, I do consider that a mechanic. I will say though, there is a non-negligible subset of levels that just don't stand out at all. Winky's Walkway is supposed to introduce Winky the Frog, but it's basically just a straight line that's 1 minute long, with one bonus room that you couldn't miss unless something's blocking your screen. Elevator Antics is just a slightly annoying basic cave level, but some platforms act as elevators. Wow. Temple Tempest is nearly the exact same thing as Millstone Mayhem, a simple temple-themed level. But now the millstones start moving and chase you very, very slowly. How impressive. Orangutan Gang and Snow Barrel Blast's main gimmicks are giving me high blood pressure. Thankfully though, I would say that these are the minority, and I can distinctly remember most levels in this game long after playing them. There are also alternate gameplay styles, namely underwater and minecart levels. To be honest, I don't really like water levels in DKC 1 at all. There are 4 of them, and I think each is either unremarkable or just not fun. Coral Capers and Clam City fall into the unremarkable camp, as I literally don't think there's a single thing that makes these levels stand out, and they kinda send me to sleep. Croctopus Chase is a bit better, at least giving you a reason to go fast because the whole level is a series of small chase sequences. And while I don't hate Poison Pond the way it seems many people do, that one can get pretty frustrating at times from the unhelpful camera and high number of deadly mincers flying everywhere. Plus, it's just too long. The unfortunate thing is the controls in these sections aren't nearly as good as the rest of the game. You press jump to paddle and bounce upward a bit. Hold up and you'll move more, hold down and you'll move less, and also increase your falling speed. This isn't a very good system, although at least this does make finding On Guard a worthwhile task because he does control well. Outside of this though, these levels have no secrets or bonus rooms whatsoever, and as we'll get to soon, to me that's an essential part of a DKC level. While I like the look of these and love listening to aquatic ambience, I think the only good thing they really do is adding variety. They're not all that fun. But now for the minecart levels, which are some of my favorites in the whole trilogy. Minecart Carnage has you riding a minecart the whole time, jumping over whatever obstacles are in your way and dodging any moments where the track gives out. This is a pretty early level in the game, and is a bit of a difficulty spike at that point, but I really appreciate it as the challenge is very much there, but also more than fair. You have just enough time to react to everything, meaning it's a test of your focus. One of my favorite levels in the game for sure, with my only issue being that once again there are no bonus rooms. But Minecart Madness near the end of the game switches things up on you. Now when you jump you actually get out of the minecart. Actually, wait, how the heck was the minecart jumping with you before? Now that was impressive. This means you have some more control over your movements, and you have to jump out of a minecart as it falls into a pit and get into other ones sitting on the rails. This is even more fun than before, as it lets them add in some bonus rooms and other secrets to find, and it's just a blast to control. So in the end, I'd say these extra gameplay styles are mixed, with one being a lot of fun and the other being fine at best. Oh yeah, by the way, remember how I kind of dissed 2D Mario earlier? Now let me substantiate that. Those games follow the same basic principle of using one mechanic and evolving it over the course of a few minutes, but in my opinion the levels can kind of blend together a bit more. The level gimmicks are maybe a bit less impactful, if that makes any sense. Take for example Super Mario World. A good game, and I would never say otherwise, but despite the fact that I've played it through 3 times, there are so many levels that I just can't seem to remember. I think the reason behind this is the way the power-ups work. Your goal when playing the game is to keep your fire flower or cape for as long as possible, so you can be more powerful and just breeze through the levels, maybe even fly over them. Because of this, I'd find that you don't have to engage with a lot of the level design. A lot of the time the game isn't really asking you to engage with it anyway, since your goal is just to get to the end or maybe find one secret exit. In many 2D Mario games, you can even skip entire worlds or just never play a bunch of the levels in them. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but I just feel like those games aren't really asking you to do everything in them. Just so you get a feel for where I'm coming from, I'd describe myself as a casual completionist. I personally think the most fun way to play most games is to engage with every worthwhile part of them. Not every part without fail, like, I'm not going to sit there and farm every single soul in Aria of Sorrow no matter how much I love that game, but I'll usually play anything that I find remotely interesting. There are exceptions, of course, like I couldn't care less about a ton of the optional content in Zelda, for example, but this is generally how I approach most games. So thankfully, DKC gives me exactly what I want. Nearly every level in these games has a strong element of exploration, where you search for bonus rooms to get a chance at some extra lives through a minigame of some kind. These are one of the best things about the DKC trilogy and add so much to what would already be pretty fun stages. The levels themselves can get tough at times, so the chance for more extra lives is always welcome. And really the number you can collect with just a bit of effort is pretty staggering. But also, and maybe even more importantly, the bonus rooms count towards your game completion percentage. If you want to get 101%, you'll have to not just beat every single stage, but find every single bonus room in the entire game. This is clearly somewhat of a focus, as the game marks any level where you've found all the bonus rooms with an exclamation point by its name. And some of the challenges, both getting to the barrels that take you to the rooms and the minigames themselves, are pretty cool. So these bonus rooms give you a strong reason to actually look around the stages and comb through every area looking for secrets. If you've followed my channel recently, you'll know I love a good Metroidvania, and exploration is one of the main reasons why. In fact, exploration is just my favorite part of any game that includes it, and the DKC series does exactly that, which is a huge part of why they're my favorite platformers. A lot of levels craft some pretty interesting challenges for you to get into a bonus room, and these tend to be some of the highlights of those stages. For instance, Ice Age Alley. This would be a pretty simple ice level, just with a few sloped platforms to increase the difficulty a bit. But if you go through the stage as normal, you'll see this platform way up above, out of your reach. There's no way for DK or Diddy to get up there. So what you have to do is go left at the very beginning, where you'll find Espresso. He can glide, which would make it possible to get up to that platform. So now your goal is to take Espresso through a huge section of the level without taking a single hit, which is pretty tough since Espresso can't even jump on enemies. This will get you access to the bonus room where you have a chance for up to 3 extra lives. I also like when you have to roll a tire a long way to be able to reach a high area, like in Millstone Mayhem and Stop and Go Station, among others. Slip Slide Ride has 3 simple and fun secrets. First, you jump on an enemy and climb up this rope, which teaches you how the colored ropes work as well. Then you grab a barrel and move it past a few obstacles to an obvious wall here. Finally, go up above the zingers here. It's not that complicated of a system, but it leads to some satisfying moments like these, which I love. However, to be honest, I would not recommend going for all the bonus rooms in DKC 1 in particular. While the idea is amazing and some levels have fun hiding spots for their secrets, there are far too many times where that's just not the case. There are way more issues with the system than you might expect, and I think it actually ends up being a pretty major flaw with the game as a whole. So let's see what I mean. First of all, I just think some levels ask ridiculous things of the player to find the bonus rooms. None of them are actually all that difficult to get into mechanically, but they can get way too cryptic at times. Stages will have you, for example, dropping into random pits, intentionally missing your shot out of a barrel cannon, jumping onto a totally invisible ledge that the camera doesn't let you know is there, which, oh my god, this happens way too often, or the other one that kept getting on my nerves, putting them in random walls. Let's talk about the walls first, because I feel like these have one of the most baffling issues I've ever seen in a game. So remember how DK holds the barrel up high and Diddy holds the barrel in front of him? Well, this leads to an absolutely massive inconsistency. Walls with a bonus room in them will explode if you carry a barrel into them. Sounds good, right? Well, it is, but only if you're playing as Diddy. For the majority of walls in this game, DK can't open their bonus rooms because his barrel hold is too high. Yep, you can slam DK's face against the wall all you want, but they just won't open. The thing is, you don't always have Diddy available, so if this ever happens, your ability to find some of the bonus rooms is absolutely destroyed. There were just so many times that I walked into a wall with DK, found no secret, and moved on, only to come back with Diddy later and find it after dozens of minutes of searching. And this is annoying every single time it happens. But to make matters worse, this isn't consistent either. There are some walls that are tall enough that DK actually can break them open, which tricks you into thinking that using him will be just fine, but it isn't. This happened to me in at least Loopy Lights, Misty Mine, Forest Frenzy, and Orangutan Gang, just off the top of my head. So yeah, this may sound like a nitpick, but it really doesn't feel that way to me. Okay, how about the ones that the camera doesn't highlight properly, of which there are many? In Forest Frenzy, you can at least see this one if you look really hard, but it shows up at the very bottom of the screen when you're focusing on dodging all of these necky enemies. Not impossible to find, but I wasn't able to. How about this one in Elevator Antics? Even when you jump onto the upper ledge, the camera still doesn't even pan up a little. Or, hey, I do love Minecart Madness, but what about this one? Yes, there's a break in the bananas, but come on, that's just barely on the edge of what someone would be likely to find. And by the way, I haven't even brought up my bottom 4 yet. What about this absolute atrocity in Tanked Up Trouble where you just jump off the platform in a random location? Like, what? How the heck was I supposed to figure that one out? There's literally no hint for it at all. Most of the time the game is good about at least giving you a banana trail to direct your attention, but not this time apparently. Or, oh god, Oil Drum Alley. Somehow I figured part of this one out by total accident, but this might be one of the most cryptic things I've ever seen in any game. You have to get into this bonus room and intentionally get a single banana. This is normally the worst reward because, I mean, it's one banana, but here for whatever reason it spawns a barrel. Before the bonus room kicks you out, you have to quickly grab it and run into the wall on the right, which holds yet another bonus room. What in the Simon's Quest were they thinking? This isn't the only time the series would put a bonus room inside another one, but this is by far the worst instance of it. And now for the final two. Let's talk about Snow Barrel Blast, probably my least favorite level in the entire game for so many reasons. It is kinda the same idea as Barrel Cannon Canyon, where the whole stage sees you jumping between chains of barrels with good timing. But these ones quickly rotate 360 degrees, so you only have a few frames to actually get the correct one of 8 directions, or else you instantly die. Add on some enemies out of sync with the barrel rotation, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Then add a snow effect so you can't see, ice physics whenever you aren't in a barrel canyon, and the level just being surprisingly long. And on top of all of that, the position of this level in the game. Remember how the save system means you're totally unable to save your game until a Funky's Flights or Candy's save point pops up? Well, this is the first level of Gorilla Glacier, both the hardest world in the game and the only one where you have to beat 5 levels in a row before saving. So if you happen to game over on any of the 4 levels after Snow Barrel Blast, you're doing it all over again. You can definitely make this easier by focusing on grabbing a bunch of extra lives whenever possible, and thankfully Snow Barrel Blast does feature an Animal Buddy token to go to one of those bonus stages which helps you do that. But it's still really tense and each death will get you more and more impatient. Oh, I also forgot to mention, by the way, getting 3 Animal Buddy tokens and going to the bonus stage just starts you back at the last checkpoint, which is really annoying when it happens near the end of a level, so I tend to avoid them unless I really need some extra lives. And then after all of that, you're expected to get to this random barrel cannon and shoot yourself directly down into the abyss where there just so happens to be a ledge you can stand on with a bonus room. And by the way, the Trail of Bananas is directing you to specifically not do that. If you figure this out for yourself, good for you. But come on, this is just insultingly bad secret placement. And now for a slightly better level, but with the worst set of bonus rooms in the game, Orangutan Gang. Ugh, god, who signed off on this garbage? First of all, there are 5 bonus rooms. Yes, 5! This is the only level in the entire trilogy to have that number, and that's for good reason. 2 of them are pretty easy to find with no issues. With another, we have the classic DK barrel carry strike once again. Not the worst thing of all time, but certainly still annoying. At this point, there hadn't been a level with more than 3 bonus rooms, so I thought I was finally done. Oh, never mind, there's no exclamation point. I guess I'm not done. I spent 30 entire minutes searching everywhere I can find before I finally just look it up. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say that I had to look up a lot of these bonus rooms. I honestly don't think it's feasible for one person to figure them all out without spending multiple hours per level, which I'm not willing to do for a game that's nominally 5 to 6 hours long. And guess what? For the last bonus room, you have to take espresso from the middle of the stage, go backwards, go under a platform, and fly under the entire level all the way back to the beginning as the camera actively fights you. Once again, if you figured this out, good for you. I don't think it's reasonable to expect someone else to. Oh, and the last one? Oh my god, it's just another DK barrel carry wall. Thanks, game. So yeah, stuff like this is why I can't recommend fully completing DKC 1. If that isn't something you care about, then I totally understand, but to me, fully completing DKC games is one of the main reasons I even play them. Not to spoil a review coming soon, but the sequel has one of the best full completion experiences I can think of in any game ever. So coming back to this one just feels disappointing. To be honest though, I think that next time I play DKC 1, I'll just ignore full completion and go straight for the end, because there's no reward for getting 101% anyway, outside of Cranky Kong briefly congratulating you. And frankly, it would make a lot of these levels more fun not having to worry about distractions like this. While I find this to be a major flaw with DKC 1, it's still not nearly enough to tank the game because otherwise it is really fun. And hey, not to sound like I'm piling even more on this game that I do like, but I haven't mentioned the bosses yet. And yeah, they kinda suck. As I said in the Mega Man 7 video, weak bosses are definitely not a game-breaking issue, so I don't consider this a massive flaw with the game, just a disappointment. Basically, every boss follows the same basic structure. Hit them 5 times while they do one attack that speeds up after every hit. The first one, Very Naughty, is comically easy to the point that it might as well not even exist. I am not even exaggerating when I say that it took me longer to name the video file after beating the boss than to actually fight it. What can I say, I'm a slow typist. Sure, it's a first boss, but this might as well be a normal enemy with how simple it is to beat. Even a first boss can still be too easy. Next up is Master Neki, and may I remind you that the level is called, that. Indeed, he shoots nuts at you. This one is definitely a bit better, but still not interesting at all. Now you use a tire to jump on his head 5 times instead of just your normal jump. That's it. Queen Bee is okay, I guess. You just have to dodge a simple pattern, then hit it with a barrel. At least the pattern does become a bit harder to dodge over time, but it still makes me want to leave and go take a nap. My favorite of the normal bosses is Dumb Drum, which is essentially an enemy gauntlet followed by a few basic attacks. It's just a test of survival rather than fighting the boss itself, which is, I guess, a fun enough shakeup. Still not great though. Unfortunately though, if the bosses weren't already boring enough, they just straight up reuse Master Neki and Very Naughty in the later worlds with slightly harder patterns. I mean, those bosses aren't even remotely impressive, so this doesn't come off as anything other than reuse of content. And spoiler warning, I guess, feel free to skip to the next chapter. King K. Rool is thankfully the best boss in the game, so they did save the best for last. At least he takes 9 hits to beat, and the 3 phases are sufficiently different. And I really like how halfway through the fight he pretends to be defeated as a fake credits screen shows up, only for him to quickly stand up and attack you before you have time to react. That was pretty fun. In the end, there's too much waiting around for me to truly love this fight, but I do think it's the only good boss in the game. And I think it's not hard to see why I say this is a pretty weak selection. You basically just hit them once, then sit there waiting to be able to hit them again, maybe dodging one simple pattern at a time. I would consider this to be one of the worst parts of the game, something that would improve in the sequels, but it doesn't really adversely affect the game, so I don't care too much. It's more the absence of a positive rather than a big negative, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think that's about it honestly. Some parts of this video may have tricked you into thinking that I don't like DKC 1, but no, I do like it, and it's definitely a very good game that I would prefer to play over a lot of others that people often consider among the greatest of all time. I think DKC 1 is more fun than every 2D Mario I've ever played. I'd play it over Mega Man 2. I'd definitely take it over the vast majority of classic Castlevanias. This is easily one of the better platformers of its time, and that's owed almost entirely to the extremely solid overall systems design. The controls are fluid, responsive, and just plain fun to use, with lots of polish in so many areas. The general level design is very good, with a lot of fun single-level mechanics that add variety and challenge the player without ever getting ridiculous. And also a heavy focus on exploration, which is my preferred type of platformer design. The aesthetic is near perfect, and I don't think I'd change a single thing about it, even if the music isn't the peak of the series. The level of charm is off the charts. Really, it's no surprise that this game immediately became a beloved classic. But at the end of the day, I vastly prefer the sequels over the first attempt. To me, all of the positives I mentioned above, outside of maybe the atmosphere, would only be further accentuated with later games. The level design is good, but compared to the other DKC games I've played, it almost seems basic and uninspired by comparison. And the negatives are certainly there. Water levels are just not very fun in this game, feeling far too simple and uninteresting with lame controls. The bosses suck, and even if that's not a deal breaker, it's still a decent chunk of the game that I don't like. A few normal levels are pretty bad as well, like Snow Barrel Blast and Orangutan Gang, with a select few others being totally unmemorable and bland. The animal buddies are fine, but would once again only be improved in later games. And to me, the biggest issue is that the game acts like it wants you to go for 101%, but isn't designed properly around that. So you have the choice of playing it as a simple left-to-right platformer without exploration, which I find far less interesting, or you can bash your head against the wall, literally, trying to find a bunch of secrets that are in the most obtuse locations you could possibly think of. So neither way of playing this game is fully satisfying to me. So DKC 1 is a fun but somewhat flawed game that I would still recommend to anyone who likes platformers of any kind. If anything, it's the game that comes before Donkey Kong Country 2, which is not just one of the best platformers of its generation, but if you ask me, one of the single greatest video games ever created. Man, am I excited to get to that one. And hey, if you'd like to see that, then as always, consider subscribing. The majority of my viewers still haven't, and if you enjoy this kind of content, it would help out quite a bit. I have a lot more in store. So with that being said, see you then, and thanks for watching.